Yesterday we began the halachos of halachos ner Shabbos. Candles on Shabbos. That's what we began. We gave a brief introduction, and now I think that it's time that we should focus on one specific statement that we alluded to this question yesterday. It says in the Gemara in Shabbos, Chav Gimel, Harogil Bener Havayin Lo Bonin Talmidi Chachomim. If you're careful with the ner, then you will have children who will become Torah scholars. So there's a few questions that we have to address over here. Firstly, what is the connection between lighting a candle and having Talmidei Chachamim as children? Secondly, we have to try to attempt to discover which ner are we discussing? Haragil b'ner. What type of ner are we talking about? Ner Chanukah, ner Yontif, ner Shabbos. Thirdly, what's the explanation of this language? Haragil b'ner havayin loy banim tamid chavim. If you're careful with the ner havayin, you will have children who will become tamid chavim. Why doesn't it say haragil b'ner zoyzil tamid b'chavim? You're going to merit tamid chavim. What's this lashon of havayin? It's this language of havayin. Try to summarize over here. Around 30 pages in the Yareach LaMoadim, in Mamorim Chov Zayin Talamid on Chanukah. We're going to go a little bit we'll actually go in order. First, he's going to talk about Chanukah, and then he's going to talk about Shabbos, but we're going to get some insight on Chanukah. Put some timestamps on the bottom that if you want, you could just skip to the Shabbos section, but this is insightful, so you should definitely go through the whole thing over here. This statement comes from Rav Huna. Gemara in Shabbos Chav Gimel Amar Rav Huna Rogil Bener Havoyin Le Banidu Chacham Talmidei Chacham, as we already discussed over here. So the commentators over here explain regarding this line. This isn't just talking about that you're going to get children who are going to become Talmidei Chacham. Rather, the madlik himself, the person who is lighting the candle himself, will himself become a Talmidei Chacham. Why then did the Gemara say Bonim Talmidei Chachamim then, which it seems like is only going on the children? There's several answers to that question. The Bach in Hilchos Chanukah in the second Siman Tafrei Shayin Aleph already is omer on this kasha. He already addresses this issue and he says the Gemara didn't say himself he's going to become a scholar. Because if the person doesn't have the mental capabilities to become a scholar himself, at least his children will become scholars themselves. So that's why the Gemara didn't say that you yourself will become a Talmid Chacham, because maybe you're not at that level, but don't worry, your children will become Talmid Chacham. But we see from this Bach that that yes, that granted that if you yourself are capable of becoming a Talmid Chacham, then you yourself will become a Talmid Chacham. The Lavush over there has a different approach. And he says over here that if the person we're talking about, we're talking about someone who himself is already Talmid Chacham. And he himself already has a lot of wisdom. And nevertheless, now he's going to merit that his children are going to now, it's going to carry over to the next generation with his children. The Eliyahu Zuta goes into this and he says something very interesting over there. He says that really, if we're going to hold that this is talking about Shabbos, so it's all about the children because the woman's lighting the candle. He goes into it more, different approaches. Now, let's discuss over here Rashi. Rashi over there in that Gemara says you're gonna have banim talmidei chachamim because the pasuk says kiner mitzvah v'toyder or through the lighting of the candle, which is a mitzvah. The Shabbos v'Chanukah Rashi says on Shabbos and Chanukah ba or Torah. So what do we see from this Rashi? We see that Rashi learns that this Gemara is referring to both lighting the candles for Shabbos and for Chanukah as well. And through both, a person will merit having children that will become Talmidei Chachamim. What's the reason? Explains Rashi, the pasuk, near mitzvah v'Torah, or you're going to light the candle that's a mitzvah, then you're going to get Torah, which is like a light, so to say. Through the lighting, you're going to merit the light of Torah. And that includes both types of lighting. Chanukah and Shabbos. Interesting, he doesn't specify Yontif. It could be that Yontif is including in Shabbos. What to discuss over there. However, the Rabbeinu Chananel, you don't need to go a tefach off the page in the Gemara. The Rabbeinu Chananel over there on the side says, Harogil b'ner Chanukah. He says, if you're careful with Ner Chanukah, you're going to have children that are Talmidei Chachamim. So we see that there's something very special specifically about Ner Chanukah. See how amazing it is? You can learn about Chanukah even right before Tisha B'Av, because these ideas apply the entire year. Now, obviously, the question begs to be asked, Sarach Biur, Ta'im Biur, we have to explain what is Miyuchad, what is special about the lighting of the menorah and the Chanukah, that through that a person will merit children that will become Talmidei Chachamim. Furthermore, why does the Gemara say Havayan, you will have? It doesn't say Zoysa. How could we explain this? Why doesn't it say Zoycha? Like over there in the other statements in that Gemara, in the Jason Gemara over there, it says, Hazohir b'mezuzah Zoycha l'dir no'eh. If you're going to be careful with mezuzah, you're going to be Zoycha, you're going to merit a nice dwelling. Hizir b'sitzis Zoycha l'talis no'eh. If you're going to be careful with the mitzvah sitzis, you're going to be Zoycha, you're going to merit a nice talus. Hazohir b'kiddush hayoim zoich b'mali gavriya, etc. So zoich about other places. Why over here is it Havayan? We're going to run through this idea quickly so we can go back to Ner Shabbos, but just so that we have an understanding over here. The Ramban addresses the idea. The Ramban, he addresses an idea of the Chashmonaim. Chashmonaim, when it came to the neirus of the menorah and the mikdash, it happened after the base of mikdash. They're going to light it over here. What do you mean? What's the connection over here? It's a mitzvah. It's an independent mitzvah because of Persuma Nisa. How can the Ramban say that this mitzvah of lighting the ner of the menorah is going to apply even after the destruction? It's the question on the Ramban. The Ramban seems to say that it's applied because the Ramban, the language of the Ramban is L'neirus Chanukah Shmoshi Noheges Afa Acher Churban Begaluseinu. It applies even after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. How is that possible over here? How is that possible? So the idea behind the mitzvah of lighting the Ner Chanukah nowadays, when we light the menorah on Chanukah, it's as if we're lighting the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. What an incredible idea! And that's why the rabbis established that we should all light it in our house, the menorah. It's like we're lighting the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. Pursue Menisa, we have to publicize the miracle. And that's through the lighting that we do. Amazing concept if you think about it. A proof to this is in Rishon, and the Gemara says on Chaf Aleph Amud Beis, Osur lehishtamish lo yushel ner Chanukah. You're not allowed to get pleasure from the light of the menorah. Well-known halacha. The Ran over there explains, since it was through a miracle that you had a menorah, the menorah that we light in our house parallels the menorah that we light in the Beis Hamikdash. Just like in the Beis Hamikdash you can't get pleasure, so too in our house. Beautiful idea over here. Beautiful idea. Based on this, we could explain, since the foundation of the mitzvah of lighting the Ner Chanukah is like the lighting of the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, therefore it only makes sense and it's logical to say that the hashpah haruchnis, the spiritual influence that we will get, that we attained through lighting the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, we can accomplish and tap into even by the lighting of the menorah in our house on Chanukah. An incredible idea based on Rabbeinu Bachaya and Shmos Chofei Lamed Aleph, as well as in Etziv and Ein Megdavar in the beginning of Parshas Tetzaveh. The menorah in the Mikdash is the makor, is the source of hashmas or hasagas atayra v'koyrach hapilpul v'chidusha b'torah shabal peh. The strength of the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash is the source of the incredible abundance and influence that the light of understanding Torah and its depths and new ideas in the Torah has on us. Any insight that a person creates comes due to the fact that they got influence from the menorah, is because of the power of the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. Based on this, we could explain that this is why the Yavanim, the Greeks, they wanted to do away with specifically with the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, because They realized the power point, the power plant. They realized the nucleus, the heart of where the Torah was coming from over there. That's why they were against it, lighting the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, because they didn't want the Jews to have Chochmas HaTorah, because it was on their comprehension and they didn't want it. And therefore they went after the menorah, they went into the Mikdash, and specifically Timu Hashmanim, they made impure the oils that we have in order to nullify this lighting of the menorah that we had. Through that, it would become null and void, the influence that we would have on the Torah HaKadoshah that would happen through the menorah. Based on this, we could explain the language of the Gemara. The Gemara said, Harogil baner havayim lo yitamidi chachamim. Why did it say Harogil? Harogil baner havayim lo yitamidi chachamim. Why did it say you're going to be zoiche v'tamidi chachamim? If you're careful with Nair, you'll merit Talmidei Chachamim. Why do you think you will have Havoyin Loy? Well, based on this, we could easily answer the question over here. When a person lights the Nair, he's going to get a tremendous influence from the Nair. When he lights that candle, he's going to get a lot of Torah, an abundance of Torah that's going to come in. When we fulfill the mitzvah of lighting a nair, which is similar lighting the menorah, which is like the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, boom, that's what's going to happen. We're going to get a tremendous amount of influence and abundance of Torah and the strength from new Torah ideas we're going to get. Kedushim, Pilpul. That's what we're going to get over there. All from the lighting that we do. And then we're automatically Havayan, we're going to get children that are going to become Talmidei Chachamim. That's the idea over here, especially that this publicizes the victory that we had over here over the Greeks who wanted to prevent us from doing that. That's why it says Havayan as opposed to Zaycha. It's going to be a natural occurrence over there. Near Chanukah, you're going to get the Talmidei Chachamim. That's not getting repaid. That's something that's naturally going to happen. That's naturally going to occur automatically over there. Beautiful idea over here. That's why it's brought down. The Rebbe Aaron Kirbitz spoke about his father, Reb Mendel, Rosh Hashiva of Rabbeinu Yaakov Yosef. And he said that immediately after he would light the menorah on Chanukah, you would sit down and learn Torah with his children. And he explained the reason based on what Rav Zalman Meltzer Zatzal says when he learned in Slosk. And he says that based on this Chazal, this statement over here, only someone who understands the inner meaning and depths behind the nair, behind lighting the candles, and he lights it and he thanks Hashem so much for the victory that we had over the Greeks. They wanted to cause us to forget our learning. And in order to properly thank Hashem for this miracle, we need to value the Torah and recognize its greatness through learning it. Only when we learn it could we really appreciate the greatness of the Torah HaKadosh, the Holy Torah. Therefore, immediately after he lit the menorah, he sat and he learned Torah in order to thank Hashem properly. They say there's a well-known custom, if a person drops a siddur or sefer on the floor, the first thing that they do is they kiss it. Rav Pam Zatzal had another practice. We quoted this on the recordings in Pirkei Avos. Kedai to go through the whole thing. I think actually Yitzchak was with us when we did it in Perek Aleph Mishnah Vav on what it says, Kenelecha Chaver, acquire for yourself a friend. Rashi,
yeah. I actually watched that cheer last night.
Okay, very good, Chazara. And the first explanation of what it means, acquire for yourself friends, Dr. Rashi Svarim. A friend is Svarim, and we discussed it over there. And we quoted over there that Rav Pam Zatzal, his custom was when a sefer would fall on the floor, he would kiss it immediately. He wouldn't kiss it. Excuse me. That's what most people. He would learn from it because that truly demonstrates your love for the Torah, a chavivus for the Torah. That's what that shows over there. It's the same exact idea over here. Now, in addition, for the person is going to merit children that are going to become Talmidei Chachamim because of the influence of the Torah. That's going to happen from the Ner. Because the candles, the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash is going to have the influence on us. That's the idea, because it's like we're lighting the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash when we do this. Beautiful idea over here. With this, we could explain our Rambam. The Rambam in Perek Daled in Halacha Yud Beis, which she loves quoting this Rambam and questioning throughout the Sefer over here. The Rambam says mitzvah ner Chanukah mitzvah chavivu hiad me'od. The mitzvah of lighting the menorah on Chanukah is a very dear mitzvah. Special about the mitzvah of menorah of ner Chanukah more than any other mitzvah d'Rabbanan, more than any other mitzvah that we do. Good question. Many answers to this question. Based on what we said, we could easily explain this. What happens when we light the menorah over here? We are demonstrating that we agree on the victory that we had. Now we learn Torah HaKadoshah through this miracle that we had, through the abundance that happens, through this mitzvah of lighting the ner. Now we have a continuation. We have more Torah HaKadoshah for more generations, and therefore this mitzvah is special and it's chaviva. It's very dear. And this we could explain based on what the Maggid Mishnah comments on the Rambam. The Maggid Mishnah quotes this statement of the Gemara that if you're careful with after the Rambam quotes, it's a mitzvah that's very dear. He quotes this statement of the Gemara that we're discussing about right now, that you're going to have children that are going to become Talmidei Chachamim.
I'm listening to the sheet.
So what do you see over here? That the source of this Rambam, that Ner Chanukah is very, very dear, explains the Maggid Mishnah. Maggid Mishnah explains the Maggid Mishnah is exactly what we just said. This Gemara that we have, what's the explanation to this? Based on what we said, we could explain Betum Tam V'das. We could explain beautifully over here that the Maggid Mishnah understands that the mitzvah of lighting the Ner Chanukah is very dear, so much so because of the influence that it has, the Torah over us, that through it we're going to merit children that are going to become Talmidei Chachamim. And this we could explain very nicely based on what we just said. When we light, it's like lighting the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. And just like when it comes to lighting the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, we're going to merit the or all of the light from the Torah HaKadoshah, so too we're going to merit the influence that the Torah is going to have and on us and on our children in particular. And therefore, that's why specifically it's a dear mitzvah because of all of this that we have over here. So we see how important this mitzvah truly is. That's one approach over here that has to do with Chanukah. A second approach is, and this is going into Maimer Kaf Ches over here, the Ein Yaakov asks a question over here. I don't understand. Our eyes see, Einenu Ra'inu Harbin Medakta. Can we see many people? They're careful. They get the olive oil. They get the best wicks. They get everything the best menorah in town. And guess what? They light it, and they don't have children that are Talmidei Chachamim for lighting the menorah. How could we explain this? What's going on over here? We find that Rabbeinu Yitzchak Sagi Nohar, the son of the Ravid, in his Kuntra Soid Habakas Neiros Chanukah, which is printed in the Sefer Hazikaron for the Pached Yitzchak on page Taf Lamed Zayin. He says that he has a tradition from Eliyahu Hanavi, and he asks the same exact question, and then he answers. And he says in the continuation, the truth of the matter is, the rabbis are true and their words are true. The entire world lights the Ner Chanukah, lights the menorah. Most people fulfill their obligations. However, miuto de miuto dezhirim lahadla kefi kol prati hamitzvos v'hadikdukim. There are very few who are careful to light the menorah with all of the intricate details and all of the intricate halachas, fulfilling them to the bottom line, to all of the small details. How many people know all of the ins and outs, all of the intricate details, every single last small halacha involved with the menorah and lights it properly? Shehez here b'hadakosim b'kol pratois pratel v'dikduka yikna v'yasik b'koyach hamitz b'skosobams kam. You can't just light the ner, you lit it, you're kosher, you're yotze, it's good, you fulfill your obligation. You have to light it with fulfilling all of the intricate details and all of the small subcategories to the ner. That's how you could do it. Wait a second. But we know that there are people who do this. And still, they don't have children who are Talmidei Chachamim. How then could we explain the statement from Chazal? Good question. If there is. That's why we're here.
It's exclusive club.
Oh,
Limited number.
Limited number? No. Kol mi sheroitze yavo v'yito, based on the second last parak of Maseches Yuma. Whoever wants to grab it, let him come and take it. Zok the Rambam, Keser Shel Torah. Whoever wants it can get it. Kahuna, Malchus, you want to become a Kohen, you want to become a king. Guess what? You can pay all the money you want. You can't get squat. Torah HaKadoshah, you stay in the base medrash. All the gelt in the world isn't going to get you to become a king, isn't going to get you to become a Kohen, Allah king. Torah HaKadoshah. Stay in the base of Medrash till become smart.
Simultaneous.
No, even so, stay in the base of Medrash. We'll take care of you. No problem. We could explain based on a statement, based on an idea that the Halter Mikelm says in his Sefer Chachmu Musar Chilik Aleph Maimer Samach. And what he basically says in short is that the mitzvah of menorah and pursuing Isa, publicizing the miracle, is kesher l'simin. It's like a special sign that we have, like a knot. It's a sign to remember the miraculous acts that Hashem performed for us. And the tachlis is, the purpose is that once we have this, we will be we're going to accept upon ourselves the yoke for mitzvahs, in a willingful way, which means on our own will, not being coerced, not being forced, and with great happiness. So we see from over here that someone who is careful to fulfill the actual mitzvah of lighting the Ner Chanukah, but he's not accepting upon himself mitzvahs and Torah. He's losing out the tachlis of the mitzvah, the whole purpose of the mitzvah. The whole purpose of the mitzvah is that we light it and we internalize the message of the lighting that we should accept upon ourselves. Mitzvahs. That's the idea. This is similar to a messenger who is sent to fulfill a certain task. And he said, there's going to be a sign so that you're going to remember to fulfill the task, a type of like a knot over here. And guess what? At the end, he remembers. The messenger said, I fulfilled what I was sent to do, and I was careful to guard the sign. What do you mean? You guarded the sign? That's not what you were supposed to do. You were supposed to fulfill your task. You didn't do your task. You lost the whole purpose why you were sent. You were sent to fulfill the task, not to guard your silly sign over here. The sign was only to get you to remember what your task was. You missed the whole point over here, the tachlis of the mitzvah. You missed everything what it was about. So too, if a person is just lighting the candles, going through the motion, what's he doing over here? He has to accept upon himself in a happy way, and because he wants to accept upon himself mitzvahs, and that he's going to get more careful with it. And that's what we're doing over here. He's going to lose the primary purpose of the mitzvah if he doesn't do that. And then the Alter Mikelm says in his great humility, and he says, many times I lit the Ner. But I didn't merit remembering the real reason why we light and accepting upon myself the yoke of mitzvahs. To contemplate, to think about the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the chesed Hashem, the kindness that Hashem does for us. Because He has the ability to do everything, and He is so merciful. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is great until we get affected. I didn't do that. Woe to a person who's just performing the mitzvahs like a monkey. What can we say? And then he says about himself, Ani v'kayotzi me, and similar to me, this is the Alter Mikelm talking. It could be that we never fulfilled the mitzvah of Chanukah properly, to publicize the miracle, to fulfill on ourselves, remembering it. He quotes in the footnote over here, Maharal and his Guri Aryeh and Parshas Vayigash and Mem Vav Chavtes, who explains, based on Rashi, that once Yaakov met Yosef after all of those years of not being together, 22 years, immediately recited Shema. What? Recited Shema? Explains the Maharal, it was Chesed over here. He watched specifically Shema, it was Chesed. He realized the kindness of Hashem. And then he had an awakening inside himself, and he said, I have to say, I have to say Shema. I have to accept upon myself the yoke of the heavenly kingdom of Hashem and the mitzvahs. All Malchus Shamayim, all mitzvahs, which Shema represents over here. That's why specifically Shema, a deeper idea. Based on this, we could explain the original statement of Rabbeinu Yitzchak Saginar, who explained that many people are careful with the Ner Chanukah, but they do not merit children who become Talmidei Chachamim because only a few light according to the intricate details and halachas that are involved. But there are people who light that way. Nevertheless, they don't fulfill the foundation and the essence, the purpose of this mitzvah properly, which is to contemplate at the time when we light the miraculous acts that Hashem performed for us, and to come from that to accept upon ourselves the yoke of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and mitzvahs, the whole Malchus Shamayim, in a willing way, beratzon u'besimcha, in a happy way, which is the purpose of the mitzvah, and without it, that we're losing out on the main mitzvah, and we're just like a monkey, so to say. If the Alter Mikelm could say about himself that he didn't fulfill the mitzvah properly, what could we answer after him? For sure, we need to be careful with this. Could we say ourselves that we properly fulfill this mitzvah and accept it upon ourselves, these ideas properly? That's what we have to be careful with. That's the idea over here, accepting it upon ourselves. That's why Harogil b'ner Chanukah havayim l'bamid chachamim. That we're going to have Talmid Chachamim if we're careful with Ner Chanukah based on this idea of the Alter Mikel, that we have to accept all of this upon ourselves, the yoke of mitzvahs, Omachu Shamayim, Beratzenu B'simcha. And then through that, we're going to have the children Midah Keneged Midah, measure for measure, because that we're going to light it and we're going to accept upon ourselves the Omachu Shamayim, Beratzenu B'simcha. Then we're going to merit children who are going to accept the Torah Kedoshah upon themselves properly, and they're going to merit Siyat D'Shmaya, divine assistance, and they're going to merit. Based on this, now we could finally go back to Ner Shabbos. Let's now, we digress, we discussed a lot of Chanukah, but let's discuss Shabbos. Why, if you're careful with Ner, with Ner Shabbos, you're gonna get children that are gonna become Talmidei Chachamim. Already discussed the question of the Ein Yaakov. Many are careful with it. From Rashi, it's clear that there's an aspect of Shabbos. Similarly, from the Torah that we learned just yesterday in the beginning of Siman Reish Shamach Gimel, the Torah says, Omer Ravuna Rogil B'ner Shabbos. If you're careful with Ner Shabbos, to make it properly, you're going to have children who are going to become Talmidei Chachamim. But we see many people are careful, especially women. They're very careful to light Ner Shabbos. It's a very special mitzvah for them. When they light Shoif Chosleiv K'mayim Lavinu B'Shamayim, they're pouring out their hearts like water to their Father in heaven, to Hashem. They're pouring out their hearts and they're shedding tears and saying, please make sure that I have children that are going to become Talmidei Chachamim, that are going to lighten up the world with their Torah and mitzvahs. And even so, we see that not everyone merits a Talmid Chacham. The Talmid Chacham club isn't an exclusive club, it's for anyone. So why then don't they have Talmidei Chachamim? Then he says a pshat in the footnote, which we already discussed yesterday with Chava and the Or, goes into it a little bit more. In short, what he says, this idea that the Rashi in Shabbos Lamed Beis, B'Shem Bereishis Rabbah, quoting in Bereishis Rabbah, it's also Yerushalmi in Shabbos that says that Chava extinguished the candle of the world, aka all of them. So what's the idea over here? So a deeper idea, she caused the sin of Adam, Harishon. She brought darkness into the world and destruction. The main reason why this world is created is for Torah. As Rashi explains, Bereshis, B'Shvil Torah Shenikra Reshis, opening Rashi on Chumash. And therefore, since Chava caused a darkness in the world, extinguished the candle of the world, therefore she has to light the Ner Shabbos, bring light into the world, the light of Torah, like we just said, Ner Mitzvah the Torah, or deeper idea over here. Lighting the Ner Shabbos on Shabbos, lighting the Shabbos candles, we have to accept upon ourselves, Omachu Shamayim. As we just said, the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. In Tefillah, in Davening, we say, Yismechu b'malchuscha. That we have to rejoice in your kingdom. Shomer Shabbos v'korya. Those who guard Shabbos and they call out to the pleasures of Shabbos. We see that there's a connection with those who guard Shabbos in the kingdom in heaven. Sheng's kingdom. That's what we see over here. But what exactly is this connection between the two over here? How can we explain this? He goes into in the footnote, Rabbeinu Bachai in Parshas Yisro Yud Tes Gimel says it's a very auspicious, it's a special time when to light candles and to pray for the children as well, to daven for them. Because when someone's involved with the mitzvah, the tefillos will be listened to more. It's a deep idea that he discusses over here. And she should daven for the children. Rabbeinu Yoina writes in his Igeris Tshuva, Jewish Gimel O Samach, daven for the children at this time. They should lighten up the world with their Torah and mitzvahs. Special time, he says, especially Yiratzon, especially with the women. This is very careful to them. Why first? Ladies first, so to say. You speak to them first. because they are the messengers for our children to send them off to the yeshiva to learn that they should learn Torah. They have mercy on them when they come back from the yeshiva as well, their children, encouraging them to learn, not to waste time from the learning, instilling fear of heaven in them. That's the idea, being modest. Therefore, they should contemplate it when they like. The Gemara in Shabbos in Kuf Yud Ches says, "Kol ha'ma'aneg es Shabbos." Whoever gives pleasure to Shabbos, enjoys Shabbos, he's going to be saved from Shivur Galius, from the subjugation of the exiles. And the reason, according to the Lavush in Hilchas Shabbos in the beginning of Siman Reish Mem Beis, which we learned earlier, the Lavush explains that he's going to be saved measure for measure, meaning over here that since he accepted upon himself the yoke of Shabbos. And the halachas are a lot of Shabbos, and it's very difficult to learn all of them. As we see, we're spending a lot of time learning. And also on Shabbos, if you're not going to learn, you're just going to sit around doing nothing. That's boring. That's very difficult, and that could bring to a bad mental state. Habatala mevi lidei shimum. It's in Maseches Ksubas. Also, sometimes a person doesn't always make it to his destination in time before Shabbos. It could happen occasionally nowadays as well. Very difficult Shabbos. And he still accepts it upon himself, therefore he's going to be saved measure for the subjugation of the exiles. So we clearly see that through accepting upon ourselves the guarding Shabbos, that is like accepting upon ourselves the yoke of heaven, because we're going to accept upon ourselves to abstain, to not to work at all, and to be careful with all the intricate details of Shabbos over here, all on the specific intricate details and small halachas over here, which is like a big mountain, so to say, that's just getting held up by a strand of hair. That's why Chazal says whoever's ma'aneg Shabbos is going to be careful for the subjugation of the exile. Shibud Galiyos. That's the idea over here. Since he's accepting upon himself that yoke of Shabbos, he's going to be saved from another yoke. So we see it's all about accepting a yoke. According to this, the Netziv says that accepting upon ourselves the yoke of guarding Shabbos applies specifically if we're going to accept upon ourselves the yoke of the heavenly kingdom, aka Hashem. Goes hand in hand, because Shabbos that's what it's about. Is created, world was created 6 days, Hashem rested. We have to accept upon ourselves Hashem. That's the idea over here. The question is, what's the connection between enjoying Shabbos and its physical enjoyments and accepting upon ourselves the yoke of heaven? The deeper idea is based on what the Anuf Yosef says in the Siddur Oitzi Halta Pios and Tilas Musa Shel Shabbos. And what he basically says over here is, in short, is that someone who guards Shabbos, we're not just talking about that you eat on Shabbos, you drink on Shabbos, and you don't remember Hashem at all, you don't learn any Torah. That's not true. It's the opposite. It's fitting that we have to come to a higher level. And it should be primarily through Torah and grasping it on Shabbos. Also, we find this in the Yeruya Shlomo, Rav Shlomo Kluger, the Siddur Beis Yaakov, the Abetz, he goes into this more. Someone who honors Shabbos because of Shabbos itself, and he realizes the greatness and the holiness of Shabbos, he will merit longevity and he will merit wealth. That's the idea over here. It's not talking about with food. Right? Based on this, we could explain Yitzmachu b'malchuscha and v'koyer oinig. The main focus that we need to have on this day is so that we accept through the food, through the onig and everything else, the yoke of heaven on ourselves. That's what Shabbos is about. It's a spiritual pleasure in Shabbos. It's what's called an oinig ruchni shel kedusha Shabbos. We have to bask in the holiness of Shabbos, get the spiritual pleasure from it, not just physical. Just like you bring a pleasure to our body. That's the idea over here. Focus on the spiritual pursuits. This we could explain the Lavush. We're going to be saved from the exiles if we accept upon ourselves, if we have this spiritual oneg that we're involved with. What's the measure for measure? What's the deeper idea over here? We have to accept upon ourselves the heavenly kingdom, aka Hashem. That's the idea. That's what Shabbos is. And then measure for measure, we're going to be saved from that other yoke, like we just said over here. The Shloh writes, anyone who's ma'anig Shabbos, it doesn't say kol ma'anig b'Shabbos. The intention shouldn't be on yourself to have an oneg. The oneg should be in honor of Shabbos. Call it an oneg, not just filling up our stomachs. That's not what it's about on Shabbos. Based on this, we could explain the Ein Yaakov that we said. Many people don't merit Talmidei Chachamim when they light Ner Shabbos, when they light the candles for Shabbos. Same exact idea that we just said by Chanukah. First of all, there are a few who are careful with all of the intricate details and minute and small halachas. But in addition to that, how many accept upon ourselves this yoke, the yoke of heaven, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu when they light? That's the main priority. That's what it's truly about over here. That's why many people don't merit this over here. Rabbeinu Yoina says, don't just be involved with narishkeit and nothing over Shabbos. Learn Torah. That's what he says. Spiritual oneg Shabbos. That's what it's about. All of the sources over here, we're just rushing through it. That's the idea in the Neshama Yisera, the extra soul, which we discussed in the past. It's not about eating. It's about that extra soul wants Torah, wants more mitzvahs on Shabbos, accepting upon ourselves the yoke of heaven. That's the Yerushalmi in Shabbos, Perek Tezvav, Shabbos, Shabbos Yom Tov, Allah Shabbos Yom Tov was only given so that we learn Torah. That's the deeper idea. He has one more piece. I don't know if we could get it in 2.5 minutes. But the idea over here is, what he says is that, talks about the pleasure from learning Torah. That's the main mitzvah of learning. Not like other mitzvahs who should get pleasure when we learn Torah. Goes into it more, and he says, based on this Lavush, Eis Yosef that he quotes over here, how are we going to say the bracha on Torah, Birchas Torah, etc. Based on this, we could tie it back in. You're careful with Ner Shabbos. What does this mean? This means, or Ner Chanukah rather, because the Yavanim want us to forget our Torah. So you have to be careful to light it properly and have the proper intention going in. Same exact idea. Then you're going to merit the children that are going to become the Talmidei Chachamim. Chassam Sofer also goes into it. Learning at night, putting extra energy into it. The basic idea, common denominator, you can't just light it. Even if you do the halachas, you have to put some energy into it. That's the basic idea. I think this was a good analysis of this statement, which could have been very cryptic, and now we get a better understanding and we could appreciate what it means going into these halachas, learning about them in depth.
The way you said it was, it causes. It sounds like it just helps. It's like a
causes naturally. Naturally, it's gonna happen. Naturally,
there's a lot of stuff you need to do also. Just list a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, you have to do those things, and also
it's just like an enhancer.
Yeah, you know, also it's one thing that it seems like if someone who's going to be so careful with everything that we just said, they're going to put more energy, making sure their children are on the right path, put all of their energies into it, you know. This is the idea. If you have another explanation, let them know. No. This is the thing.
Lashon of Rogel, though, is much more on Shabbos. Rogel means like, you do it often.
You could regularly light Ner Chanukah also. Rashi says Chanukah.
Rashi says Chanukah.
I hear Rogel is better on Shabbos. I hear that.
Yeah.
I hear that. I would think Bapashas it is on Shabbos. The sugyas are in Shabbos in the middle of Chanukah sugyas also.
No, I'm just saying because it's I think if you look in the language, the Gemara more Rogel means to do things. Okay.
Nishmas Maran Rebbe Bein